So you dropped in there to see me sort of fail at insult arm wrestling.
I dropped it. I dropped in because it's like the whole opening of the game. I just hadn't seen it in a long
Yeah.
time, and it's like, wow, you know, we tried to cut those cutscenes down a few minutes, and we didn't do a great job. It's it was during a period of that whole era. There were some games that just like had 10-minute cutscenes in the middle of them, and you're just going, wait, there should be a game here someplace. And even for the opening, where we had to kind of recapitulate everything that happened in the previous games and launch the story, it was still like, every we tried to cut down every second to try and get people moving into it. And even so, oof, that's yeah, it's a lot of talking there.
I
um
think it was
I,
something. It was something
I
about the time, wasn't it? There were people could
yeah.
do these great cutscenes, so they just did them.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the worst offenders, of course, being all those old Final Fantasy games, where it's
Yes.
like, hey, we're trumping along, we're playing a game, and now here's a movie.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
with an animation style that doesn't match anything. Even in Escape, you could tell those opening cutscenes. We were using, very really primitive 3D, but then we would do these cinematic cutscenes where, okay, we're going to pre-render everything now, and all of a sudden we can actually have more than three characters on a screen at a time and things like that. You could tell just from wandering around Melee Island, we were kind of Melee Island is very empty because we could not actually bring in like hordes of characters. The wandering pirates went away from the first game because we couldn't afford it. um
I never thought of
so
that, but it
there's
is. Yeah, you're right. There's
yeah,
nobody there on that
it's like
island.
we couldn't afford it, and they were doing all kinds of horrible tricks every now and then to try and make things seem more populated. It was definitely an experience. Yeah, and I did not know you were going to be playing the PlayStation version. Yeah, and yeah, getting those controls. The PlayStation controls are a lot even more janky than the PC controls, which is
Yes.
an unfortunate thing. Yeah, we were trying to get away a little bit from the Grim Fandango controls, which also had their own issues at times. But yeah, it's a sort of an in between thing. I'm very happy that by the time we went over to Telltale and you said, nope, we're doing point and click, darn it. Everything's point and click. Why
You
not?
were
We
like,
got we got mice, we should use them.
yeah, that's fair enough.
Point and click with steering. That was, where we eventually landed, and that was much better. Um,
Well, we'll get
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'll get to sort of the Telltale and Monkey Island and Sam Max. But at first, I guess I was gonna just say, if you can go back that far, it's been a while now. But first of all,
Yeah.
how did you join LucasArts? How did you get to join them?
Ah, I joined LucasArts in 1990. It'd been about a year after I graduated from college. Wasn't sure what I was going to be doing with my life. Was making a couple of shareware games on the Macintosh for the old World Builder product, which probably no one remembers, which was a point and click adventure game thing. Didn't even realize there was such a job as actually working for a professional game company, PC game company. And a friend of mine who had recently applied for LucasArts, but had since gotten a job with Apple where he could make a lot more money, uh, was contacted, got a call back, and he said, yeah, no, I'm working for Apple now, but I've got this friend, and you should talk to him. And so my friend Jeff Susby basically got my foot in the door, and that's how I joined up back when LucasArts was still up at the ranch. And they were at the ranch for 2 more months, and then we got kicked into downtown San Rafael. But that's how I got the job.
And how did Escape from Monkey Island come about? What were the kind of thoughts? You might not be able to, I don't know, remember exactly
Um,
where it came from, but in terms of obviously,
let's see. That was, yeah. It was it was post it was obviously post Curse
Yep.
and post me working on Afterlife and a few other things. And they basically came to Sean and I and said, well, we'd like you to get that particular band back together and let's do a fourth one. And we've got Grim Fandango plugging along, so let's do it in 3D. 2D is dead, 2D is expensive. Let's do a 3D version. Um, and we kind of jumped at the chance to actually play around in that world. We'd both kind of touched it a few times, done a little side work on it, but had never been deeply in. So we jumped and went for it.
Yeah, someone in the chat makes an interesting point. The internet thing saying 2D more expensive than 3D, which is something I was thinking as well. I would have thought 3D would be more expensive.
In theory, not. That's a
Okay.
it's by the time we'd done Curse, it was not expensive when we were doing little teeny 256 color scum characters that you could just do little walkie animations. By the time we did Curse it up the ante to, oh yes, no, these are really nicely, almost Don Bluthian animated characters, and it got a lot harder to do that. And everything was going 3D. 3D. Everybody was, so we wanted to keep pushing that. And so and we were doing that and simultaneously turning our backs on the scum system, which had its own, why we did that I'm not quite sure to this day. And so we were simultaneously building a nice Lua engine, and saying, okay, let's use Lightwave and try the 3D tool to create these characters. And none of us had really done it before. It shows up in a few things. We in a lot of the characters, a lot of the crinkliness, let's call it, of the 3D characters in Escape, it shows up because we were all experimenting and trying to figure things out. um, and some things we figured out well, some things not so much. um, eh. But yeah, I one of the takeaways from that for me has been going forward is never go into battle for a game without an engine already built and working, and also never try to do two huge things at the same time on a project. If we had, so if I'd have my druthers going back and say, yeah, let's use the Scum engine, it works, and throw all of our brain power into doing 3D, something like that.
And that's
Um,
why the
that's,
scum bar
the
gets replaced by the Lua bar. That's a little in joke in the game, isn't
about
it?
halfway through, yes. Yes, little in joke. We, if nothing else, uh, a lot of times at LucasArts, we were far too impressed with our own in jokes.
No,
We
not
would,
impressed enough, I
it's,
think.
we, we just scattered. I had totally forgot the in jokes and the cultural reference. I'd totally forgotten that we had named the first chapter "Things to Do on Melee Island When You're Dead," which is a riff on a indie movie. I think it's Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. Is
Okay.
that the name of it? I'm sure someone in the yeah. So it's like it's I'm surprised we don't have a My Dinner with Andre reference in
Yeah.
there as well, given it's that kind of level of intentional obscurity that is somewhat defining. I've kind of drifted away from that over the years. Hopefully,
Fingers crossed. Yeah, good. I'm
yeah.
sure you have. I'm sure you have. Apologies. I think some people were saying the stream keeps lagging. It seems to be fine for me. So
Ah,
I don't know if it's like issues with people watching on their phones. But I can talk to you
perhaps.
fine, Mike. So I don't think it's an issue
Yeah.
with you. I'm being able to, yeah, fine
Okay.
for other people. So yeah, it might just be an issue if you're watching on your phone rather than on your PC. But I was going to say anyway, Mike. You brought up obviously it being sort of exciting to make a Monkey Island game, but I guess compared to you sort of taking on Sam and Max, which in a way was a completely new project. Obviously, Steve had come up with the idea, but in terms of Monkey Island, that was already sort of a well-established series. So what did it feel like being able to
Yeah,
step into that world? Was it a bit scary?
it was a little bit scary, but at the time, a lot of things were still being, it was still a very loosey goosey company with regards to continuity and things. There's, obviously a couple of things we kind of stomped all over during the course of the story, like with regards to Herman Toothrod, for example. But there was nothing in the way of a Bible for the characters. We all kind of had this sense of, oh, we know this character. We can just keep going down this road and see where it goes. We kind of thought to this day, there's like huge questions about, what is the deal with the voodoo lady anyway? What is the deal with LeChuck? And, so we kind of felt like we could, and Monkey Island, obviously, between the first and the second game, who knows what the heck's going on in Monkey Island? So we felt like, yeah, sure, why not? Giant robot monkey.
Yeah, throw that in.
Yeah,
Why not?
uh, why not? Um, I think in the years since we've kind of decided, okay, maybe we should start seriously thinking about what's going on and not be so overtly goofy with the license. It's sort of it licenses that you keep telling stories with will start to accrue some kind of overall storyline if you take them a little bit more seriously, and I think that's what's been happening. There are things I'm very happy that we added there. I actually did like the bad guy that we threw into the mix for this one and didn't make it all about LeChuck for a change. I kind of, I do like the whole idea of, completely merchandised pirate island. I thought that worked out well. Um, and, I liked just a step on the third rail. I do actually kind of like the idea behind Monkey Combat. Um,
Yes.
we should have
Who
been,
came up with Monkey
we should have been,
Combat? Now I want to
I
know.
think that's I'm going to lay that at my feet. The I think the whole idea was, at some level, we wanted to, you can't do insult sword fighting again,
No.
really, right?
Yeah. No.
The thing that works really well about insult sword fighting is that the initial surprise of it. Oh, and then we're going to gather up some insults and responses and go with it. And Curse did okay. Now they have to rhyme. Um, so we touched nicely as homage with the arm wrestling, and there was this idea of, okay, well, we'll just abstract all that away. It's a call and response thing. We should have shortened the whole darn thing. Made it a really shorter puzzle, and
Maybe.
then really hit you over, and then really hit you over the head with what happens when because the final puzzle with it with the giant robot where you actually have to play to tie is a solid adventure game puzzle, but we really needed to hit you over the head with the foreshadowing better so that you don't just trip upon it in the end. And we should have recorded more monkey sounds.
Yeah, it's good. There are about three sounds, and you get to know those sounds pretty well throughout the game.
Oh yeah,
But that is part of it, and it was 20 years ago,
yeah.
so we're not going to be too harsh on the game. It's still a classic. I mean, it at the time, did it feel like there was still a long way to go for adventure games? I'm kind of just wondering at the time, because obviously it was the last adventure game that LucasArts did. Were you thinking, oh, there's going to be, because obviously Freelance Police was supposed to come afterwards. There was another, uh, you know,
Well, and then then every European adventure gamer died. So
yeah,
that
they all
was
just
that
died on the
was how
same
it was
day.
explained to me. It was amazing, uh, but uh, there was a sense of an age starting to come to a close. there was a lot of writing on the wall at LucasArts that, hey, this Star Wars thing is makes us money. We should do Star Wars games. And adventure games, even in the golden age, didn't sell spectacularly, and they were expensive to make. Um, so it wasn't until, and even the Telltale formula later on worked really well for about a couple of without telling too many tales. Worked really well with a couple of licenses, and then probably didn't. And they got ridiculously expensive to make. I mean, those were basically we're doing half hour long movies, really, and you have to sell a lot to make those work. So there was a sense that it was a kind of fading, and it's the fact as one of your viewers mentioned, the whole commercialization angle. There was a slight cynicism that probably leaked into the whole theme there. I'm going to sorry, someone is. I'll let it go. There was a little cynicism that probably leaked into the theme. So yeah, there was a sense that it was all kind of drifting away. Fortunately, from where we were sitting in our isolated little bubble at the Death Star complex, we didn't notice it as much at the time. At the time, we were, just happily churning away at, telling jokes and coming up with horribly abstruse puzzles at times. That was the other thing, even aside from, the sunset of the golden age of adventure games. It was also probably one of the last mess with the player style classic adventure games
Okay.
done it by a big company. I mean, because there are some things in there where we are sort of gratuitously awful to the player. You
Like?
know, uh, well, there's when you get to Lucre, there's a number of um, puzzles that you can't just write out in a FAQ file for the masses. It's like we're going to explain to you how this puzzle is going to work, but because Stemmle decided to randomize everything, you're going to have to figure out the individual complexity of this puzzle yourself. You're
Ah.
going to have to, there's a lot of code breaky kind of stuff in there. And, you know, and there's also, because we weren't as nice. I was looking over the walkthrough this morning. It's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of places where I made people just go back and forth for no good reason.
Yeah,
It's like,
someone in the chat says the swamp section, apparently, of Luca. Which...
swamp section. I'm going to cop to something. I'm really happy with how the the Mists of Time puzzle worked out.
Yes.
That's a The Mist of Time puzzle works out just exactly how I imagined it. I will also admit to ripping off that concept from another game. If you, I will. Does anybody want to guess what game I ripped that off
I'm
from?
gonna leave this.
Uh,
Leave this open to the chat if they want to guess. I'll let
yeah,
them.
I ripped it off from I ripped off the basic idea of it from another game that was somewhat contemporaneous, or maybe a year or so before that I played. It's a point and click text adventure game from around that time. Um,
Ooh.
but yeah, yes. But the basic idea of being presented with a scenario and having to figure out how that scenario got to be so that you can uh, go march backwards through time. Yeah, I borrowed that liberally. None of the puzzles are the same, and of course, it's all in a proper adventure game environment with having to maneuver around. But yeah, there's. I thought that is a spectacular idea, and the next time I get a chance to, I'm going to do a
You're gonna
really
steal it.
full adventure game. Yeah, I'm going to do a good version of it, and someone will figure it out.
I'm gonna leave it open. I'll ask you at the end if I remember.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean,
but that
speaking
that
of
one
that.
works
Okay, sorry. Go
nicely.
ahead.
Go ahead. No, continue.
No, no, go on. We're here for
I
you, not
I've
me.
got nothing actually.
Okay.
No,
I
no,
was
I've
just
got
gonna.
I no, yeah.
I'm gonna leave it open to the chat to try and guess that, but I was just gonna say, were there any characters that didn't make it into the game? You might not be able to remember this, but were there people that you wanted, or were there
Um,
things that you wanted to do with the game that didn't make it?
there was a much more ambitious version of I think Sean's giant pachinko puzzle in Monkey Island that just was never going to work. So that got shortened considerably. There was um, bits on. Actually, I can't think of. We put most of the stuff in that we wanted. I imagine that somewhere around on the smaller island with Miss Rivers, we probably had more puzzles originally. It got much shorter as things started to get cut. God, we had that whole bit with the crows too. Man,
Oh
that
yes.
worked out okay. Gratuitous Odin references. Um, man, yeah. But no, I think the funniest things were, we there were some things we got that we didn't that we that were embarrassing that we got. There's like the bank manager. Um, we because we have we write up casting ideas for voice actors and things, and I said is this ridiculously minor character has like 6 lines of dialogue, and we'd like a Jeffrey Jones type, the principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off,
Yes, yes, yeah.
and they went out and got a Jeffrey Jones. It's like, we're going to drag Jeffrey Jones into a studio to read these 6 lines. Why are you doing this to us? But I'm happy that we got Edie McClurg to play Miss Rivers, who's the secretary in Fearless Fearless Day Off, and she did all those wonderful lines. Like, oh, that was great. Um, no, I think we got most of the things that we actually wanted in that game, which is insane and probably a sign that LucasArts is being a little too slack with giving us what we wanted. Um, you know, there were hard. We were constantly fighting. There's cut scenes that are cinematic that we pre-record, and and that's great because we can back then we couldn't swing the camera all over the place, as you noticed. During most of the regular game scenes, all the backgrounds are just pre-rendered flats, and so we can only have a couple of camera angles because every time we added a camera angle, we'd have to pre-render the backgrounds and make new versions of the walk boxes and all that. And so that was most of the tension, was trying to decide, okay, we're gonna spring for another camera angle here or what. Um, so that was it, and trying to get the musical cues to work. We were working with a newer version of, or a revamped version of what used to be the iMuse system, so that everything, all of those wonderful musical hooks could happen properly when the action was hooked up. That was hard. Anyway, I could go on for hours.
Which is good, good.
Do you
I
have
mean,
more?
it's a big game. Don't forget, it's actually a really big game.
It is, yeah. I mean, it is. Like I said, I told you yesterday. Until yesterday, I'd like completely forgotten like an entire act of the game. It's like, whoa, oh, that's right. There's an entire island of other stuff here. It's like, oh man, and that's even before you get to Monkey Island. Um, so yeah, I mean, it is. You could easily have, to use the Telltale model, for example, you could easily have chopped that all up into a season of a Telltale game, and that would have worked out just fine. Um, it is, yeah, and that's the other thing, is back when we made just huge adventure games. That was, I think about that in Fate of Atlantis, the game one of the adventure games I worked on previously. Fate of Atlantis is also just this monster scope of a game. That yeah, let's do 3 branches. That'll be easy. Yeah.
But I mean, at the time, that's what that's what people wanted, I guess.
That's
Or
what you had to do. If you're
yeah,
going to
that is
charge
what you had
40,
to
if you're
do.
going to charge $40 for a game in a box, you got to give them a lot of content.
Yeah,
Nowadays, of course, everything is this very interesting, the game never ends model,
yeah,
right? There is, it's, which is, again, a tricky thing. It's an amazing thing. I for the last, I've been working in the casual games, mobile games minds for the last few years, getting my head wrapped around that. And it's good because it's been a nice way to relax after years of like, how am I gonna put a story that I really want to tell up with the game and try and make it work? And as things got, you know, through the years at Telltale, I was always wrestling with the issue that stories are not games, um, and by and large, you tell stories about the games. You can tell stories about the games. We played this great game. We played a great game of basketball this afternoon. Let me tell you how it went. You can have an emergent narrative that comes out of a game that way. Or you can actually say, I've got a story and I want to tell generally, right? And that's, where the Telltale model eventually drifted is like, I've got this story. It's got some things going on inside of it, but it's not really a game. It stopped being, at some point, they became really cool, spectacular interactive fiction, right? It's, this is going to, it's going to have a beginning, a middle, and the end. There's going to be some things going on in the middle. And they were told these wonderful stories, these wonderful interactive experiences. Um, but they stopped being games per se, in sort of my sense of the strict definition. And I think that's definitely a path that more people should pursue. For a few months at the beginning of this year, I was working at a place called Fogbank that was just doing straight up interactive fiction for mobile. Before Disney shut it down foolishly,
Disney.
as they are wanted.
Yeah.
Disney. Um, yes, exactly. Um, and that's a whole thing that should be continued to be explored. I think there's also this market for puzzle games, puzzle story games, where the story's a nice window dressing, sometimes with particularly moving moments and things like that. But mostly they need to, if you're going to do a full-on puzzly game like that, I think you got to make sure the story stays the heck out of your way for those. I think they're and interestingly, I think by and large, the old school graphics really help that a lot. When indie studios do these nice, old style pixel 2D kind of things, um, to that helps with the storytelling. One of the things that made got harder and harder and harder, Monkey Island in particular, um, was the whole someone says something, Guybrush gives you a punchline on a dialogue choice, or vice versa. Got harder and harder to feel right pretty much instantly as soon as we added voice. But even more so, the more there is this sort of uh, as the 3D got better and better in the verisimilitude experience. Oh, I'm actually in there. I'm in a space, and now I'm waiting for Guybrush to say a punchline because I haven't tapped it yet. Became more and more of an issue. It's one of the reasons that the whole free flowing Telltale model worked so well. Eventually, it's like, nope, if you don't do anything, things are going to continue happening.
Yeah.
You know, right? Um, and the guys who eventually did the Borderlands, it's like, well, the joke's got to happen without you.
Yeah.
Um, and so again, not quite as much of a game. So that's why I said I think the pixelated stuff works really well,
Mm.
because it's the primitiveness of it. Frankly, going all text, not having voice, often makes it better. Um, there's less of a feel that your rhythm has been disrupted. when you don't hear a voice talking, um, because it feels slightly more. I'm still in a computer. I'm still, it's still it's not a real person, just sort of waiting for some other real person to talk. Um, so, yeah, it's yeah. I don't even forgot what the question was
I
at
was
this
going to
point.
say that. I
I
was going
just
to ask you, can you remember what the question was there? But you answered it well. You answered many questions well there, I think.
questions. Yeah, I think about this stuff a lot
I'm sure
because I'm
you
stuck in
do.
my house.
Yeah. Well,
uh,
I was gonna say about your thoughts on the game now, on Escape from Monkey Island now, because at the time it was, it was reviewed pretty well. It did pretty well. I think more recently, for some reason, some people are a bit down on it, but I don't.
the monkey, the primitiveness of the 3D doesn't play well
Yeah.
compared to, let's say, Telltale. We could actually make good look, really nice looking models. The monkey combat thing it has third act problems. Let's just be honest. It has some third act problems. Um, it does stomp, and it does stomp on the whole Herman Toothrot is Elaine's secret grandfather thing. Probably a little bit too much of us wanting to make a mark on the license. Can be freely ignored. Feel free to headcanon that out. Um, but yeah, and it comes on the so it's an odd child in the middle between Curse and the Telltale games.
Do you think it was just
That's it.
unlucky, like you say, it wasn't 3D was still a relatively new thing, so it was a bit unlucky that it just came around at that time.
There's a lot of that, yeah, and it the funny thing is it would be almost impossible to do a nice dress up of it now, a re-release where you've cleaned everything up. It would just be somebody would have to go in and it's not like let's make a virtual scum engine and voila, it all runs and we can just redress all the frames. So there's some of that. But there's, like I said, there's lots of good puzzles in it. It's lots of good, you know, like I said, it's the last of the mess with the player puzzles. It's hard at times, that game. Um, as opposed to later where it was pretty much no. We actually have to make a in both the in all of the Telltale early games, before it switched over to the Walking Dead model. We spent a long time working on a clue system that basically, the longer you went without figuring out the next puzzle, the more people would like randomly shout, "Hey, maybe you should look over here. Maybe maybe you should talk to that guy. Maybe you should pick that thing up and hit him over the head with it." you know and we spent hours and hours coming up with that clue system on Telltale. Where I think Escape, we have a little bit of that, but it was actually for that. What did we have in Escape? You actually could just go to. I think we actually did have a thing you could click that would. Yeah, we had, I think, a more overt hint system, but no one uses those. Um, but I've gotten to be a much better adventure game designer since then. I think I would. There are
I
things
mean,
I
I'd
would
argue
not
you were
do
still
today.
quite a good one then. I don't put yourself down, Mike.
Yeah, I'm even become I think a better adventure game designer, a much better storyteller. I've probably spent a lot more time investing in how to properly structure a story since then. I was looking over those first puzzles as you were playing them, going, "Good grief, really? The first thing you're doing after the wonderful pirate setup there is you're going to an island to talk to lawyers and breaking up a catapult. What the heck was I thinking?" It's like, where's the piratey stuff? Yeah. So there are things like that I would definitely pull off a lot better these days, story wise.
And
But
speaking, well,
that's
we'll go
20
even
years.
further back now because I did want to also ask you a bit about Sam and Max, obviously, and I will ask
Ah,
you about the VR game. But I just wanted to know a little bit about what it was like, really working with Steve Purcell for Hit the Road. I mean, what was the team dynamic there? Because obviously they were his kind of creations because he had the comic first, didn't he? Um, and would
yeah.
he just kind of come up with ideas and you went with it, or what was it like?
Very, it was very fluid. The whole thing was kind of loosely based around his, road trip comics that he did with Sam and Max, where they just went all over the place. He had the basic idea for rescuing a Bigfoot, I seem to recall, and we just, we came up with I can't even remember the process. I remember we sold the game to the company. They wanted a Sam and Max from us. We had like a 3-page pitch. That's how you could get games started at LucasArts back then.
Wow.
A
Okay.
3-page pitch um, for the story. You know, Sean and I realized very early on we didn't want to do, for example, dialogue trees the old way. We wanted to do them subject based, so you couldn't see the jokes coming. So that's how we got the icon based interface. And Steve was great to work with. Steve has always been great to work with. We also were working with his fiance was lead artist on the whole thing, Colette Michelle. They got married in the middle of the project. There's always that weird thing. We realized at companies when you get married at a game company, you inevitably like invite members of your team to your wedding. People who, under normal circumstances, like they wouldn't be in your wedding party. When I got married, there were people I was working with at the time. It's like, okay, they're all here at my wedding. So
Oh.
yeah, we got to Sean. Yeah, Steve and Colette, Steve's wedding cake had a salmon had salmon Max in a bridal gown on top of it. It was great. That was very.
Oh. Oh, that's
But
pretty
the
cool.
four of us basically kind of kicked that all to put it all together, and it was like any other project. There were times where it was just everything was moving swimmingly. We were in sync, and at times we were having little disagreements. Um, but in the end, I'm happy that I we eventually got the tone right for the characters, which can be hard. And I'll talk about that later because Steve's voice is very distinct. It's that I've often described it as you know putting absolutely the wrong adjective in exactly the right place. Um, there's a lot of that. Um, you know, his he doesn't do the thing that he doesn't fall into the trap that I fall into, which is the being over impressed with your own vocabulary and reaching for a big word when a proper small word will do, but just hitting that right note of strangeness. And it's also interesting to see how Steve's sense of humor has shifted over the decades as well. His, those initial comics of his are a lot harsher and more violent. I mean, not in a bloody kind of way, but in a sort of, hey, isn't it fun to pummel somebody? Then he's drifted a little away from that over the years. So there's a lot of that still in that first game with, hey, let's reach inside a cat and throw it away and that kind of thing. And
Yeah, I was gonna say there's
um,
a fair amount LucasArts let you get away with in that game.
there is, and and all of it just wonderfully strange that we took a lot of things that might be in a background in a Steve strip, the whole bungee jumping out of the nostrils and Mount Rushmore thing. That could very easily be a background thing that he would just draw and then said, no, let's go up into the and jump off and do puzzles based on that. Things like that. His fondness for you know cool retro kitsch stuff is also spectacular. And one of the things we kept doing over and over again, Steve has a collection of creepy ventriloquist dummies in his house. That's something to behold. um, and we eventually got around to doing those. It's not in, we had one in the first game just sitting up there and being creepy. Eventually we got around to, we've got to have a ventriloquist dummy episode. Um, it was fun. It was big fun. And again, the company let us get away with all kinds of random stuff that, they shouldn't have. They tried to hold us to a budget and we blew right past it. Um, you know, and it worked out because we got a good game out of it, and that's nice.
Yeah, you definitely did. And then it must have been quite a strange feeling to return to that for freelance police and it not be quite the same feeling at all, really.
Well, it was the same feeling in a lot of ways.
Mm,
The company anymore, so he was basically just making sure the script, the story seemed sound and the script didn't, do anything strange, and throwing in again those really great words. And like I said, the whole thing flew apart. Um, it would have been very interesting to, was sort of a precursor in a lot of ways to what Telltale would eventually do. It was going to be episodic. We were going to bundle all the episodes together initially. That was the theory. Episodic with a serialized story running through it. Um, and frankly, had a lot of the same people involved. Um, but it felt pretty much the same until suddenly it wasn't.
mm.
And that's
Was
probably
that
the
like an
best way to.
overnight thing, or was that a couple? Did that seem
It
quite a
was
sudden thing?
weird. It seemed like a sudden thing. It was an ambitious game. If I'd be honest, probably too ambitious by half. We were going to have mini games in it that you could replay on we had a little handheld creature that was kind of like a Nintendo DS or something that you could replay the mini games from earlier episodes on and get high scores and things. And when frankly we could have just had, oh, let's just do the story game, but we felt like we needed to push more gameplay into it, and so it was interesting. We had a whole thing. We had an episode on a space station built by third world countries in which the closing mini game was kind of like the Tron Master Control thing, where you had to knock out panels in a sort of 3D
Okay.
breakout thing. But the Master Control thing, the triangle, it was all made out of nacho chips.
Okay.
Um, and the Master Control was a big triangle computer nacho chip. Like I said, ambitious.
Yes.
Um, and it would have been wonderful, but it was, yeah, and did seem very sudden at the time. I was probably much better. I was very good when I was younger about trying to insulate myself from the goings on way above me. And that was probably didn't work out too well for me because I was shocked
I
when
think a
this
lot of
happened.
people were shocked, though. A lot of people were shocked at the time.
A lot of people were shocked. I think the company was possibly not doing a good idea of communicating, issues at the time with, the market and their desire to continue doing many, many, many more Star Wars things. Um, which is, fair for them because Star Wars made money. I got to work on a couple of Star Wars things, so I'm happy. I got to write Star Wars for a little bit. That was fun.
Um,
And then we picked it all up. Yeah, and then we picked it all up again in Telltale.
yeah, I was gonna say.
And I think
People are saying in the chat, they would like to play freelance police, but I'm guessing that's just is that ever going to be possible? Do you think?
it's never going to be possible. I have all the cutscenes on DVDs here at home, and
Really?
occasionally some of them leak out. Yes. We had Alex Borstein playing the big villain in that from Family Guy.
Did you?
She was great. Yeah, we got to hang out with Alex Borstein for a while. The No, it's problem is that was a situation where one of the things, like getting back to earlier, we built a brand new engine for it, so there's no way that it could be, it's not like we could put it on Scum VM or anything like that. So trying to drag that up from the dead would be practically impossible. The game was 70% built,
Oh
so
wow,
there's
okay.
that.
So that's pretty far. That's pretty far. And
Yeah,
where has all
but
that
the
gone? Have
remaining
you
30%, what?
where sorry, I was just gonna say, where has all that gone? Have you've still got most of it?
It's all people have it.
Okay.
I don't, without
Okay.
saying
No, no,
anything,
no, sure,
people
yeah,
have
yeah.
it, but yeah. Um, I'm happy that if some people have noticed that some of it in uh, Poker Night at the Inventory too, pretty much there's a story thread where Sam and Max pretty much lay out everything that would have happened in that story. They just start talking about it, along with the secret unrecorded love theme from Sam and Max at the Road.
Oh.
Um, I got all Yeah, there is a point where I got all of the actors around the table to sing line by line the a song we wrote for Hit the Road that never got recorded. Mostly because we realized we ripped off the theme from Thunderball. Um, it's one of those. I was writing. I wrote the song, and then someone, you're just saying that tune is entirely the tune from Thunderball. Oh darn it! So I guess we can't use that. Um, So yeah, so that's all I basically Easter egged most of the plot from Freelance Police and Poker Night.
Nice. I'll have to play that then.
So
I haven't.
that's
I'll have
that's
to.
something. Oh, you should play that. It's basically a poker simulator that's a joke delivery mechanism. Thousands and thousands of jokes.
Excellent.
Um, yeah,
I've got a
so that's that.
question. Moving on to sort of telltale stuff. Billards in the chat has said, and I'm going to ask a bit more about telltale stuff, but it says back around 2009, there were rumblings around Telltale doing some episodic Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle stuff. Any light you can shine on that?
At any given moment in Telltale, they're that kind of stuff. Yeah, Maniac Mansion was rumbled about. Yeah, basically all of, but LucasArts owned all that stuff, and now Disney owned all that stuff. We got to do Sam and Max, obviously, because Steve did all that stuff, owned all that. Monkey Island was the biggest one we could do, and so we latched on and got Ron Gilbert to help us out with the story on that. Um, Pretty much as soon as LucasArts got sold to Disney, that was all over. Um, you know, Disney wasn't particularly inclined, I don't think.
Disney.
I mean, yeah, there were all kinds of things. It's one of those and some of it keeps coming back. I mean, there was talk about doing Venture Brothers for a while. There was talk about doing Gorillas, a Gorillas game, which would have been insane.
Hmm.
Frankly, I'm not entirely sure any of us in the building were hip enough to do Gorillas. It's like,
Yeah. How would that have
yes,
worked? I'm intrigued, but
yeah, yes. As you can tell, it's like, yes, 40-something-year-old Mike Stemmle is totally plugged into the modern music scene. Yeah, Gorillas could have been
wow.
Gorillas would have been just like an insane Scooby Doo, I think. Um, right. There is Gorillas. There was something along the line that was, I realized years later, oh yeah, we were almost like, Disney's Descendants license.
Oh, okay.
The
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, we were pitching that to Disney like as a game before it became a thing. It's like, oh, I mean, it's an obvious thing. Oh yeah, Children of the Villains. Yeah, you should do a story like that. But yeah, at any given time at Telltale, especially in that weird interregnum between Walking Dead and us doing all these really big licenses, there's like, oh yeah, we should do this and this and this, see if we can do anything. So yeah, Day of the Tentacle came up. I particularly was really interested in the notion that the tentacles were actually just weird extrusions of some Lovecraftian dark god that were just sticking out into our world,
That could have
but in a
worked.
cute way.
Yes, yeah.
That could have worked. It would have been insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was all kinds of that stuff, but yes, there was talk. God only knows what will happen with those licenses in the future.
Mm,
They're kind of. I have this sinking suspicion that Disney doesn't even really have
yeah.
them, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah.
just there. Yeah.
So
But it must have felt
it's
nice
just
to.
there. It's a
Yeah, and it's just there for them to kind of have, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. It felt nice to get back to Monkey Island and to get some closure on Sam and Max while working at Telltale. I think guys like Jake Rodkin did an amazing job with the end wrapping up and Jake Rodkin and Mark Darren did an amazing job wrapping up the Monkey Island story. Um, and for the next few years anyway, until someone wants to kind of touch on it again. And I think people like Chuck Jordan working on Sam and Max did amazing job of, especially in that last season with Sam and Max, did a great job weaving together an amazing story there. Um, I'm just happy I got to play with it again for a while.
Oh, if it's all right with you, I'm very interested to ask a little bit about Sam and Max, the VR game, which you're currently working on. You're back to Sam and Max again. You can't get enough of Sam
Yes,
and Max.
it's just every 10 years.
Yeah.
Do this, and then when I'm in my 60s, I'll get to do it to write a Sam and Max game with the little chips in our heads that play them. Um, that I got a call. Was worked with over at LucasArts as um, this company called Happy Giant. They've done some VR before. They somehow worked out a deal. They worked out a deal with Steve to work on and hustled up some money to build a VR game. And as it happened, that company that folded, earlier in the year folded. So I had some time on my hands, and it came around that they help us write this story. So write the story, do some design work, write a bunch of dialogue. So joined up. It's a very interesting beast, VR. I'd worked a little with it over at my previous company, Monkey Fun, just doing the tank battle game. They're cool, you know. And I actually finally got to, they shipped over an Oculus that I got to play with for a couple of weeks. I shouldn't have said that out loud. um, so that an Oculus so I could see what VR is all about,
Yeah.
and actually play with the VR gear. And it is amazing. The just the experience of it. Um, and it's a challenge because you're probably going to ask how does that even work for an adventure
Yeah.
game?
How does it work for an adventure game, Mike?
Because you can't be Sam and Max in a VR experience. It's just not going to work. So, luckily there was an idea that had been bouncing around for a mobile game or a next PC game for a few years. The notion of a Sam and Max Freelance Police Academy, where you, the player, are being guided through the experience of becoming a police officer. And so we just ran with that. So it is going to be a lot more of it's an experience in which they need help and they're getting old. Old Sam and Max.
Oh.
We do a few. There are a few jokes of them. Hey, remember that thing we did in the '90s? How old are we anyway? Kind of humor. Um, and they've got a training center, and there's lots of cool things you can do in VR that we never could do in PC games. You know, um, lots of even the experience of standing 6 feet off the ground on a platform and looking down is enough to give you the willies.
Mm.
You don't have to be all that fast paced, doing a climbing wall, which would be virtually nothing in a PC game. Actually having to grab a thing and pull yourself up, that's nice. And so we ran with that. We've just got these series of wonderfully absurd, freelance police training challenges wrapped around or in the middle of a delightfully odd story that I'm not going to spoil too much about.
Okay.
It's the usual. A lot of there's a major saving the world component. There's a a very retro kitschy hook for the ultimate bad guy. Um, Involving a beloved toy from the 1950s, um, a ride that I dearly miss from Disneyland. Um, that I will not say which one, but it is a ride that is no longer there, and people can try and figure that out. And occasional and dips into the city to go fight a guy named Teddy Talks, uh, who is a futurist, and I think there's a demon. Yeah, we did finally do a demon in a supermarket like the comic books because we figured we should do that at some point. Um, and it is interesting just to have a in the start of the game, you flip over a flaming dumpster on your head, and there's Sam standing right in front of you,
Wow.
and Max is aside, and it is just the strangest thing in the world. It's like, oh man, that's just amazing. And then it just goes from there, and they're throwing you, they're immediately, tossing a rocket launcher at you and telling you to go shoot a giant monster. All of the stuff in the trailer that you've seen so far is pretty much just stuff from the first 5 minutes because we
Okay.
didn't want to spoil anything
No,
else.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's yeah the giant five-headed planarian worm is just from the beginning
Okay.
because we should because we've learned how to start things with a bang in
Yeah.
the last 20 years, and it just gets stranger from there. It is interesting coming back to them again. You know, trying we embrace all of their gaming history in the story as much as we can. We obviously have to be a little oblique since we're an entirely different company now. But yeah, I mean, we have one thing we definitely are push. One joke that we definitely had to do is we had to make reference to the original VR game in Freeland in Hit the Road.
Oh yeah.
It's there. Yeah, it's
Excellent.
somewhere in there. Is the yeah, yonder lies the castle of my father, the king. Bit we have, you know, we can't use obviously any of the Telltale characters that got added um, because they don't belong to us.
Mm.
But we have some references to them. We have references to the fact that Max isn't even the original Max anymore because of time travel shenanigans. Those kind of jokes crop up for the true fans. But mostly it's its own thing now. It's we give a little bit more insight into, well, insight or not insight into what the heck is the freelance police anyway, because there's still an open question about whether or not the freelance police actually exist, or whether or not Sam and Max are just a couple of psychos running around beating up bad guys
I would
and
love if that was
pretending
the
to talk to the
case.
commissioner. Right. The commissioner may not be a real person.
Yeah.
Um, it's not like you get to talk to him. So we've got all that. We've got all the training ground, abandoned amusement park on a pier in the city that's been falling apart. Um, and all the rides have been reimagined to allow for things like obstacle courses, bomb defusing, uh, training, target training. We do have shooting galleries that are just amazing. Rotating shooting galleries with different dioramas on them, just like the really nice ones that you see in some theme parks, and things like that.
So it sounds like, I guess it's going to be slightly more kind of like mini game actiony rather than puzzly, or is there going to be still an adventure game element?
There are
Or
there is still there's an adventure game element, especially every few once you succeed in getting a decent enough score in a few of the trials, they get called into the city and do some adventure gaming in there
okay,
to stop a current threat, and then they come back and do some more of that. And a couple of the training areas are full on adventure. We have a basically a full on escape room is one of them. We're tentatively calling Get a Clue, which is basically, nope, we're dumped in here. Basically, it's a Stemmle special. We dump you in a room, we've randomized all the puzzles, get yourself out.
okay.
While Sam and Max are snarking at you through the speaker. Um, it is one of the I will say in this mode as opposed to the usual games, it is much the writing the dialogue for Sam and Max is definitely a trap in a lot of ways. You have to be very careful not to write all of the dialogue in a form of I'm Sam, I'm saying something useful for a puzzle that you're doing now. And I'm Max, here's a joke. Right? You have to remember to make Sam funny because otherwise Sam becomes the straight guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Sam is really funny at times in a sort of dry kind of way. It made it really fun writing him Poker Night because he got to since Max was way over on the side of the table and Sam was the guy who was playing poker, he had to actually carry his own jokes most of the time. And when he does, it's really nice.
Leiko Sam in the chat asks, are there any options that allow the player to choose how they want Sam and Max to be voiced in the VR game?
I knew you mean by which actors.
I'm guessing. I think this is what they mean.
Yes, no, we're using the same guys, Telltale Games. Uh, they are, it would be really expensive to record all the dialogue twice, especially since in this game they are carrying a lot more of the load than usual. There aren't as we have other characters, but they aren't as omnipresent as Sam and Max are telling you to shoot more or climb higher or you know punch that clown. Um, so
Does that happen?
so yes, we are. There are some clown punching. It's always good to have the
Good.
clown punching. Um, the No, that's we are Peter Chan, who designed the backgrounds for the original Hit the Road game, and drew those artists who came on board to do the concept art for this game, which is great because he's an absolute master and he's been working in VR recently, and so he's able to say, okay, yeah, sure, you want a broken down amusement park, but it should look here's what you need in order to grade as you come in and so forth, and we'll make this a steps up and so forth, and so it's actually really looks like one of his very Purcellian drawings come to life. It's beautiful. It is nice that basically you can just wander around in this world and be happy for a good 30 minutes. I'm just going to look around at everything. I don't really, and it is amazing in that way that you don't, random comments about the world don't have to take up as much of the game because it's so viscerally there. You don't have to have a line that says what's on a poster
Yeah.
because you can just walk up to the darn poster and read it. It's so much. There's a lot of ways it frees us up to do a lot more interesting things.
It
Um,
sounds really
so
exciting. I mean, I love the idea of adventure games going into VR. Do you think is
I
this the start of it, or is this just an
I
experiment?
think there's I well, it seems like everything in VR is an
Sure.
experiment.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of VR which is, hey, let's try this and see if this catches on, and people will start buying the gear. Um, the But I think there is something there. I mean, as I said, there's certain things that you know we've had to do. You're not going to play as Sam and Max anymore. um, and that can be okay if if you're making a nice new. I think there's something to it. I mean, there should be more essentially escape room kind of adventures in VR than there are right now. There's a number of them, but there should be more, and that's sort of classic adventure gaming. Um, it is a little tricky. What what I've noticed in a lot of the VR games so far is you know if you've got other characters in there with you, that whole problem of you not doing anything becomes even more of a visceral problem when there are people right there who kind of want you to do something. Some games, you know, some very games, attempt to address this by frankly having the other characters just constantly shouting at you at times and sort of um, so you run into the problem of either you've got to either write a lot, and a lot of the writing I've had to do for this one is Sam and Max. If you're hanging out in the hub, Sam and Max kind of got to keep talking until you do something. They don't have to be constantly, but they hey, how about those mats? It's just gonna just so that the world doesn't feel even more empty. Um, so that's a problem there. If you're doing much more Mist-like kind of things, which I think there is a Mist VR game coming, as I seem to recall. Um, you know, big empty world as it is, so
Yeah,
that's just fine. I think there is things are going to start happening there in that space, is my sense, and there's going to be nice stories wrapped into it. Probably short stories at first. I think that's a good way to start. Um, we're kind of doing sort of little storylets. We're letting the story sort of seep into the game every now and then. I'm going to go do some more writing to make sure there's enough seepage this week, in fact. Um, but it's I think it's coming.
good.
Hopefully,
We're looking forward to it. I really like the sound of it.
yeah.
Calculon in the chat says, is it coming to PSVR or is it an Oculus exclusive?
I
You might not know.
I like I said, I cannot say any
Sure.
platforms it will be on. I did borrow an Oculus to find out what VR was all about, but I will neither confirm nor deny any of the platforms right now. We'd like to get it out there on as many as possible, but that's just me. Um, you know,
Yeah.
but there will be announcements. It should be coming out early next year. That's the theory. The nice thing about one of the few nice things about this whole pandemic sweeping across the globe is a lot of game development can happen without actually going into an office, so it's kind of bubbling along. um, Last I saw, yeah, I think they were starting to work on the last act of it. Right now we haven't recorded all the voice. We'll definitely need to go do a lot of pickups. The whole nature of the whole nature of VR has made it a lot easier. You have to wait a while and then go into the game and say, "Wow, this is a dead space. We need to add more dialogue." It's much. So there'll be a lot more learning as we go a lot about that. Do you have any other
I
questions?
do. Yes, well, I was going to say we'll finish off soon, Mike, because I know you've I know I said, I think on the email, I think I
No,
said maybe 10 minutes or so, but I hope you don't mind.
no, you get that's one answer out of me.
Yeah,
10
yeah.
minutes.
Well, Retro Rizzler in the chat says, do you have a fave adventure that you had nothing to do with? A fave adventure game that you didn't have anything to do with? There can't be many.
Nothing. There aren't that many because there aren't that many. Um, I will. Um, I say I enjoyed a lot of the Sierra from when I was younger. Um, I really liked at the time, and I'd have to go back and see. There was a in the classic adventure game mold. There was the Star Trek, the classic Star Trek adventure game that was done with the original series characters. That I thought was one of the few Star Trek licensed products that managed to be true to the spirit of the license, do a whole bunch of things. had landing parties, had stuff happening on the ship, um, and had solid writing. I liked that. Um, I'm trying to think of some other ones more recent. Um, I thought, you know, I had nothing to do with any of the Walking Deads, so I can honestly say I liked a lot of the Walking Deads, even though say their status as games is not actually a solid question. Um, you know, I'm going to tip over the card on the game I ripped off for
Yes,
Mists of Time.
tell us.
That was I believe, I'm not sure whether it was two or three, but I think it was Sorcerers Get All the Girls two or three. Um, Not a great game. Actually, it was a pretty solid game.
Well, you stole from it,
Um,
Mike.
I stole from it. It was actually a pretty solid game and had a final puzzle which I didn't rip off involving you have a piece of inventory. It's a book you can't put down, and you
Okay.
can't actually put it down throughout the
Okay.
entire game. And the final puzzle involves giving it to the bad guy, who's I don't know doing some kind of spell or something, but then he's stuck with it and can't put it down. I'm not sure how it worked that way, but there you go. Yeah, it was a pretty good cheesy game and had a very nice solid puzzles in the middle. Um, I liked. I also there was not a full on game, but a game system that I encourage anybody who's got a Mac emulator from the original old Macintosh emulator. There was a product called World Builder that allowed you to build adventure games with pictures that you could tap, um, point and click adventures. That was a wonderful product. Had its own little programming language. You could make games with it. That was one of my favorite things of all time. It's amazing how little I actually play adventure
I was going to
games.
say, are
I
there any sort
play
of recent games you've played? Doesn't have to be adventure, but
no.
what have you
I've
been
been
enjoying,
I've
if
been
anything?
well. I've been with the kids. We've been playing a lot of The Sims on PlayStation, just because you know and it is interesting to watch how different people play The Sims. When I play The Sims, I play it. I don't play the grindy version of The Sims. I play a hey, I wonder what will happen if I do this kind of thing. I like to push at the edges of it, see what happens if I have a homeless person in The Sims. Whereas the kids have built an amazing facsimile of our house,
Wow.
and just from every piece of furniture, and it's like okay, and they're just pushing everybody through all their careers as fast as they can. It's like okay, that's different.
Whilst you're making people
Um,
homeless.
yeah, I play a lot of casual, word games on, on my phone. Um, I've been playing way too much Bee Swarm Simulator on Roblox.
Okay.
Just because that's my grindy game that I play just to zone out. I've been watching my kids play Fortnite like crazy, because that's that is well, it's a wonderfully absurd thing that shouldn't work. I mean, it's beautifully done. It's a wonderfully done game. Um, but I've gotten since I've been working in mobile, I've been keenly interested in how games monetize, right? And it's a game that should not monetize at all, but because there's a billion people playing it, it does. It that's how that works. It's a wonderful game, but yeah, watching them freak out about it is amazing. And it's interesting because they've sort of drifted off and stopped playing it for a while. Going just great because that's a wonderful game. Um, they're playing Zelda again. They're getting ready for the Zelda. They've downloaded the demo of that and going, oh great, we can kill 100 monsters at once now instead of two. This is wonderful. Um, that's gonna be the big thing. Assuming they get it as a Christmas present. So I do a lot of watching my kids play games because they're 11 now and they're totally and they're playing Among Us like crazy, like everybody,
Yes.
which is that is a great dynamic that, it'll be interesting to see the copycats that come out of that.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
because, yeah, and, there's a good one you could put in a nice VR game.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting, wouldn't
You
it?
could,
I seem to have your I've
yeah.
I've got your video frozen a little bit, Mike. It may be the
Hmm.
internet issues you were talking about before. I don't know if it's the same for other people. You're a little bit frozen for me, unfortunately. But
Oh,
can you see me?
I can see. Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't really
you're
matter if you can
perfect.
see me. I don't know if it's the same for the chat, but it looks like you. I could restart the video, but I mean, I was just going to ask only one or two of the questions, so it's up to you. I'm happy to. Yeah, he's frozen. Let's try it. Let's see again. Because it'd be nice to finish off. Let's have a. He did warn me that this might happen, but we were going for quite a long time there, so I was hoping it was going to be all right. Right, I'll just
Yeah.
shut this down for a second, and let's see if we
Okay,
can. Oh, I'm going to start again, Mike. Let's see if this works.
I'm back.
Hey, he's back. Yeah. Yeah, I just well, I mean, as lovely as it's not, it's nice to see a static face. It was nice to.
And I did bother shaving, so.
Exactly. Me too, actually. But yeah, so we were just talking about VR and Among Us. I was gonna say, do your have your kids played any of your games?
They have played my games. They really liked Hit the Road. They played the Telltale Monkey Island and the Telltale the Salmon some of the Salmon Maxes because I was only partially on those. They haven't played Back to the Future. They have not played Escape yet. Because but they probably will at some point soon. They haven't played. I think they played a little of Fate of Atlantis. But yeah, it's hit and miss. And of course, everything is so slow compared to what they're used to, right? That's the thing about those older games is um, it's a bit like the difference between Superman the movie and any of the more recent superhero movies is Superman the movie, um, the original movie, you don't see Superman for like an hour. It's like we're going to build that up for a really long time, and you compare that to most of the Marvel movies. Even and it's like no, we're going to get you really into some deep, heavy action pretty quickly. Um, and no matter how and so the pace of those older adventure games can sometimes be a little slow for them.
Yeah.
Especially. Um, but they like the jokes. Actually, they don't like the jokes. They think their dad is not a funny guy.
Oh, come
Um,
on. Surely
I,
not.
no, they, like all good, tween children, they think their parents are the least funny people on the planet.
Well, you tell them they're wrong.
Uh, I tell look, I got some awards here.
Exactly.
Nope,
Hey,
nothing.
your dad is funny.
I get paid to write. This is what keeps half the roof over your head. But no,
Yeah.
does not. No.
It doesn't go down well. Well,
But
unless there's, I mean, if you've got any more questions, because poor old Mike, he's been here for a while now,
yeah,
so I'm gonna
yep.
let you go in a moment, Mike. But thank you so much for. I know exactly. Look at
It's been my
same here.
pleasure.
No, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
been
like
really good. Being able to have a chat with you. I really appreciate you letting us have a chat. A final
yeah.
question, and although I think this is really answered in Escape from Monkey Island, but Mintopia says, "Did Ron ever tell you the secret of Monkey Island?"
Ron did not tell me that the Monkey Island is an island of many secrets.
Yeah,
The giant robot monkey being just one of them,
yeah.
and also since the whole place changes every time you go there, who knows
I think that
what's
I
actually
thought
the
you might
deal
say
with
that.
Monkey Island. I suspect, we did in the end reveal that in Tales that the Voodoo Lady is running a much longer play. with between Guybrush and LeChuck. So it's probably something to do with her, and who knows?
Okay.
Um, they never really did resolve that whole "it's all an amusement park" thing from the
No.
second game, and because it was never supposed to get resolved. Uh, and so who knows? I think Ron knows. I think Ron telling. I would love to see Ron take a whack at it.
Yeah.
Um,
I
that
think we all would.
he should. Yeah.
Well, if you'd like to maybe
Uh,
just pester him a little bit, Mike, that'd be good.
I think well again Disney.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Disney.
Disney. Come on, Disney.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
good stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
honestly, thank you
All
so
right.
much, Mike. This has been really, really good. Really appreciate it. And I hope you've got more planned for after Sam and Matt's VR as well. Have you got anything else in the pipeline, or
I've got I've got well I'm I am currently a man doing lots of hither and some of them will get big, some of them will get small, and we'll see what happens. How's that?
okay?
Um, yeah, I am not currently employed by a company, so I am trying to get, I've got literally lots and lots of irons in the fire right now. You don't
Cool.
know where I'm going to turn up next.
Oh, it
All
sounds like
right.
a threat. Good
It is a
stuff.
threat. It is a threat to the promise. Uh, nice chatting with all you
Yeah.
guys in the chat. Go out there, play games, and if you're, I will say what I always say to young people, if there's some young people in there, or even
What
old
are you trying
people.
to say, Mike?
If you are interested in this industry at all, go out and make your own games. That's how you get in. That's how you get your foot in the door. That's how I got my foot in the door, along with luck. um, and there are plenty of ways now for you to make interesting games that don't involve a lot of startup effort. There are engines out there. There are ways to do it on your own. So go out there, write your stories, come up with your game ideas, even if you think they're horrible. The process of making your own game will teach you more than anything else. So that's my 10 cents at the end there.
That is excellent. Thank you so much, Mike, once again. And see you in another 20 years.
10. Call it 10. I'll be 73 in
All
20
right,
years.
10.
I hope
Cool.
I'm retired.
All right, we'll
All
call
right.
it 10 then. All right. Thank you
Bye.
so much, Mike.